Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
With rents sky high and a homelessness crisis still growing, housing is front of mind for many across the county. Good evening, I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, the San Diego City Council declared housing as a human right. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer explains what that means for the city, as well as tenant protections that could soon be in place.
The special city council meeting comes as San Diego, for the first time, recorded more newly homeless residents than those that are being rehoused.
This is important for us as a city to make this commitment to the residents of San Diego amidst our housing and homelessness crises, that we will do what it takes to meet the moment, and everyone has a stake in this issue.
There was also a workshop for stronger tenant protections that took place at the meeting. Ace San Diego and PANA had members that spoke about the current state of the city's tenants' right to know ordinance.
Stronger tenant protections are a requirement for many of our families to remain in their homes.
But there was significant pushback against the new proposal from landlord groups.
The ramification of the draft policies, while some portions are legally questionable, are going to be destructive to more quality housing being built and being renovated.
Even though rents are starting to go down, the compounding effect of inflation has many people's finances stretched thin.
Every day, our families in San Diego who love to live here and want to remain here are facing evictions, facing housing instability.
50% of households in the city of San Diego are housing cost burdened. The city needs to build over 100,000 housing units by 2029 to meet its current and projected needs, with nearly 45,000 units being for low or very low income earners. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
World leaders will be coming together in November to discuss the planet's changing climate. San Diego officials are hoping this meeting of the minds will have some focus on our oceans. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson reports.
The 27th Conference of the Parties, or COP27, convenes in Egypt soon, and the ocean is getting more than just passing attention. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, and it absorbs both carbon and heat.
The ocean plays a central role in climate, and what oceanographic institutions have wanted for a long time is for the ocean to play a central role in the climate discussions and climate debate as well.
The November event is expected to draw more than 35,000 participants during its two-week run. It's an event that's happened every year since 1995. Leinen says the ocean took a back seat during the early conferences, but climate scientists are increasingly recognizing the role it plays in climate science. But there is concern the ocean's ability to help regulate the climate may be changing.
But it may not be able to buffer us from all of the extremes that it has been able to do in the past.
Leinen says the ocean has absorbed a significant amount of carbon and heat, and watching the ocean adapt is a key to understanding how a warming climate will change the planet. Leinen says the climate news isn't all pessimistic.
The ocean's resilience, our adaptability, and our commitment to change really give me great optimism.
197 countries will be represented at the conference. The Conference of the Parties is responsible for key agreements aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. 197 countries will be present. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
As San Diego works toward its climate goals, a new building material could make construction more sustainable. Coming up, what is mass timber and where it's already being used? Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, remains in the hospital after the violent attack at his home in San Francisco. Meanwhile, the alleged attacker was charged today as more questions linger about his motive. As Mike Valerio reports, the safety of government officials is also in question just days ahead of the midterm elections.
The man who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, at the couple's home in San Francisco, charged with assault and attempted kidnapping today.
The investigation is ongoing, so there's a lot left to do in this case, and we're just moving along and doing the best we can to get the evidence that we can get to our prosecutors.
Police say 42-year-old David DePape entered the home through a back door. Pelosi was able to call 911 at the start of the attack. Officers say they saw DePape violently assault Pelosi with a hammer before they tackled him to the ground and arrested him.
They were actually trying to make target identification, saying, "Where is Nancy?" All of this eliminates the narrative that this is a crime of opportunity broadly.
Even though police have not released a clear motive, authorities believe the attack was intentional.
Definitely, in my mind's eye, there was more to it. It wasn't just the assault, but there's a potential kidnapping or a potential hostage situation here, all very serious.
DePape, described by those who knew him as an odd character, posted memes and conspiracy theories on Facebook about COVID vaccines, the 2020 election, and the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The assault has renewed conversation on political violence.
I mean, it's horrific, and it's horrible, and it shouldn't happen anywhere.
We've got to say, we can have a heated conversation about the issues, but this violence has got to stop.
Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
San Diego County is struggling to find enough poll workers who are fluent in languages other than English. Our news partner iNews Source spoke with advocates for immigrants and refugees, and they say that those who speak Somali, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Arabic are having trouble finding translators at voting centers. According to iNews Source, the registrar says it has better staffing for those who speak Spanish and Tagalog. San Diego's Measure H would open parks and rec facilities to child care businesses. But KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser says the measure includes a confusing word choice that has led to some opposition to the measure.
Measure H would allow the city to lease out land and facilities to childcare businesses. Currently, city land can only be used for parks, recreation centers, and cemeteries. Councilmember Raul Campillo supports the measure.
Right now, the city charter only allows 3 uses for parks: passive space like a green field, a recreation center with a basketball court and things like that, or a cemetery. It makes no sense that we aren't looking at every city facility and seeing how we might be able to incorporate childcare into it, both for our employees and for the public.
Campillo and other supporters of the measure say it will help alleviate San Diego's severe shortage of childcare providers because it will make it possible for the city to lease space. However, an odd word choice in the ballot language has fueled some opposition to the measure. The text of the measure appears to give the mayor, not the city council, authority to lease out city land to childcare businesses. In a recent editorial, the San Diego Union Tribune endorsed a no vote on the measure because it, quote, gives a single official vast power over extremely valuable parkland. But Campillo says the newspaper missed an important point. All the leases for more than 3 years have to be approved by the city council. He says no childcare provider would want such a short lease.
I would be shocked to see any child care provider wanting to do a lease of 3 years or less, given the infrastructure investments, the fact that they are businesses, typically small business or nonprofit. They're not going to want to start something in the short term and then see it possibly evaporate in 3 years. So the idea that the mayor has unfettered discretion is just over city park leases is just flies in the face of municipal code.
Elected officials say they don't want to change the language of the measure. Once the city council puts a measure on the ballot, its language cannot be changed, according to the Registrar of Voters. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
A tax initiative is on the ballot for California voters. Prop 30 would impose a tax on any individual's income above $2 million to support zero-emission vehicles and wildfire prevention. Cal Matters reporter Nadia Lopez explains.
California. It's known for its stunning beaches, redwood forests, sunny weather, and dirty air. It has some of the worst air quality in the country. State data shows that more than 90% of Californians breathe unhealthy levels of air pollutants. To reduce air pollution and greenhouse emissions, Governor Gavin Newsom has asked the Air Resources Board to ban the sale of all new gas-powered cars by 2035. So, how will the state meet its goal and who's going to pay for it? Voters will help decide this in November.
Hi,
I'm Nadia Lopez. I cover the environment for Cal Matters, and this is Prop 30 explained in 1 minute. Prop 30 would impose a 1.75% income tax increase on Californians making more than $2 million per year. The tax would generate up to $4.5 billion annually. Most of the money would go toward rebates for people buying zero-emission cars and to build more charging stations. Half of that funding will go to low and middle-income residents. A quarter of the money would provide funding to hire and train firefighters. The measure is backed by environmentalists and public health groups and is funded largely by the rideshare company Lyft. State regulations require Lyft and Uber drivers by 2030 to log 90% of their miles in electric vehicles. Supporters say the tax would generate much-needed funding to support wildfire prevention and help accelerate the transition to electric cars. They say the state's top earners should foot the bill since they're the ones most able to afford it. But opponents, including the state Republican Party and Governor Newsom, say Californians don't need more tax hikes because everyone is already feeling the effects of high inflation and surging gas prices. They argue that the tax would drive many residents out of the state to benefit a special interest, rideshare companies. Vote yes if you think millionaires should be taxed to help fund electric car rebates and more firefighters. Vote no if you don't. To learn about this proposition and others, visit calmatters.org.
And you can find more election coverage at kpbs.org. The KPBS Voter Hub is where you'll find stories explaining the key races and an in-depth ballot guide as well. You can get there by clicking on the link that you can find on our homepage.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Supreme Court considers whether to overturn another precedent, allowing race-based college admissions. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
California recently updated its building code to allow high-rises made almost entirely out of wood. But not just any wood, an emerging type of wood product called mass timber. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says its use is growing in San Diego, fueling hopes that mass timber can help with the city's climate goals.
On the western edge of Scripps Ranch, just off I-15, crews are assembling a 10-story building made out of mass timber. The product is made by joining several planks of wood together, usually with glue, to form large structural panels and beams.
They are first fabricated by gluing plywood together. You can still see the seam.
Xiling Pei is an engineering professor with the Colorado School of Mines. This building won't ever be inhabited. It's a research experiment Pei is leading to test how mass timber responds to earthquakes. The building's walls are specially designed to move and absorb energy. It's built on something called a shake table. In February, it'll mimic earthquakes of increasing intensity, as shown here from a smaller scale experiment in 2017.
I know our mass engineering is pretty solid, and we have good material. I think we're gonna put on a good show, but the reason we do research and the reason we do tests is we don't know the full story.
The main appeal of mass timber is environmental. Steel and concrete cost huge amounts of energy to produce. Mass timber, on the other hand, is made from a renewable resource grown by the sun. Trees capture carbon from the atmosphere and store it in their cells. That means sustainable production of mass timber can offset the burning of fossil fuels. Pei hopes his research will help the product go mainstream.
In a way, we're playing a role to be a good educator for the public and for also building officials to say this is totally feasible. And there's a great benefit.
Architects, engineers have always struggled with, how do you build in a way that is actually positive for the environment?
Jennifer Cover is president and CEO of Woodworks, a nonprofit that promotes mass timber.
The building industry contributes about 40% of the total greenhouse gases globally to the environment. And if you look at just building materials alone, it's somewhere between 9 to 11%.
This summer, California amended the building code to allow structures up to 18 stories tall made with mass timber. Cover says those updates came after research showed mass timber is remarkably resistant to fire. When exposed to flames,
the solid piece of wood begins to char, and what that does is create an insulation layer against further heat damage, and so the wood is actually protected and it self-extinguishes.
Despite its potential to help decarbonize the building industry, mass timber remains something of a novelty in North America, but its popularity is growing fast.
The building comes in through here, it makes an L, and you're going to have an outdoor plaza.
Alex Alemany shows me around a lot in North Park where he's planning to build a 5-story, 55-unit apartment building. It'll be a hybrid with mass timber floors and ceilings, but conventional wood framing for the walls. Alemany estimates the mass timber is adding at least 15% to his construction costs, but he's betting future tenants will pay a premium for the aesthetic appeal.
When you go in, you're going to see these huge exposed mass timber panels, right? Completely unobstructed, and you're going to have that nature element inside of your unit, kind of like you're in a wooden cabin.
A lot will have to change before San Diego sees its first mass timber high-rise. Contractors with experience in mass timber are in short supply here. Alemany expects the material will have to catch on with large, deep-pocketed developers first.
And the more and more of those larger scale projects get accomplished with CLT or with mass timber, there's going to be a trickle-down effect to the mass market and the smaller projects.
San Diego's Climate Action Plan briefly mentions mass timber as a more sustainable building material that the city should seek to incentivize. Exactly what those incentives will look like or when they'll take effect is unclear. In the meantime, Alemany says the city has to get more familiar with the material. He submitted his blueprints for review last December and is still waiting for a building permit. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Doctors are making the observation that this might be one of the worst seasons they've seen for the respiratory infection known as RSV. But the news is not all bad. The FDA is poised to review 4 vaccines for the virus, with more than a dozen more still in the testing phase. One of the vaccines is designed to be given right after birth and has been shown to be 75% effective. RSV was the leading cause of infant hospitalizations in the U.S. even before the surge that we have seen this year. And a deadly avian flu has spread to California and San Diego County, putting wild birds and domestic chickens at risk. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on the threat and what, if anything, can be done.
The California Audubon Society last week asked homeowners to take action in response to the new strain of H5N1 bird flu. Mike Lyons is with Audubon California.
The avian flu is spreading throughout California. We're recommending that people take down their bird feeders or don't fill them right now, and to empty the bird baths where birds may come to drink or bathe. And really, that's just to minimize birds congregating in people's yards and bringing them closer together, which can spread the disease.
Lyons says small songbirds are not as likely to die from the bird flu, but waterfowl like ducks and geese and raptors, eagles and hawks face a grave danger. When the flu takes hold in flocks of domestic birds, it can be devastating.
And so when it gets into domesticated chicken flocks, it can wipe them out with 100% degree mortality.
Some chicken farms in San Diego's East County have tens of thousands of birds. Hilliker's Ranch Fresh Eggs in Lakeside has barns that house 30,000 chickens. Company CEO Frank Hilliker says an outbreak of bird flu would be devastating.
If we come down with avian influenza on the farm, all birds must be euthanized, and then we have to stay clean until our environment tests negative for avian influenza.
Hilliker says he's been watching the avian flu since it appeared in the eastern U.S. and has been marching west. He says his farm is on high alert.
We limit access to the farm by visitors, trucks, and we just have a lot of disinfection stations that you go through.
But he says that won't stop an infected wild bird from dropping feces on his farm that gets tracked into a barn by an employee. The Audubon Society says the destruction of wetlands in California has made the problem worse, as many wild birds have been forced into smaller areas where infection is more likely to occur. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
On this Halloween night, trick-or-treaters will be out strolling the streets for candy, of course. Our media partner 10 News spoke to the San Diego Police Department and an ER doctor at UCSD Health for important safety reminders. If you're out driving, slow down and keep an eye out for pedestrians. It's also a good idea for trick-or-treaters to wear bright colors and stick to familiar, well-lit routes. And while just about every year there seems to be warnings about drugs that look like candy, doctors say there's no need to panic.
If you look at the data over the past several years, we've never really seen a confirmed death from a poisoning from Halloween candy. And I think part of that is that it's not something that occurs very often. But at the same time, we expect parents to remain vigilant.
And police say that if the candy is factory sealed, it should be okay. But if there's any doubt, you should throw it away. Birch Aquarium is also in the Halloween spirit. Staff shared this video of one of its divers dressed up in costume to do some underwater pumpkin carving. The eels, sharks, and the giant sea bass that live in the aquarium's kelp forest also got plenty of Halloween treats during this special feeding time.
Let's start with those weather headlines because we will be talking about some big changes on the way. We're still dealing with those gusty westerly winds. Those continue through Wednesday night. And then things are going to be turning even cooler as we head into mid and late week. We could be talking about periods of some light showers as we go throughout our Tuesday night, continuing throughout Thursday morning. So big changes here on the way. Looking at temperatures heading into tonight, we'll still be into the 60s in San Diego, but we'll see 50s dropping down in Oceanside, Borrego Springs, 55, Mount Laguna will drop into the upper 40s. Then as we head into tomorrow, we see that big dip in the jet stream, and that allows those showers that have been in Washington State and Oregon to dip farther south. Look at this. The rain making its way into San Francisco, Redding. Will still be dry, but eventually we could see some of those showers passing by as we head into the week. Otherwise, tomorrow does stay pretty nice with that sunshine. San Diego about 69, looking at Oceanside about 70, and Ramona about 72 degrees. Then Wednesday, I mentioned we'll see that further dip in the jet stream, and that can allow some showers. LA down through San Diego, and then we'll see a lot of that snow making its way into those higher elevations, and that colder air starts to take over. So get ready for some big changes. Here's a look at that 5-day along the coast. We'll see temperatures bottoming out on Thursday, 63, overnight temperatures dropping into the 30s. Inland, we'll have those rain showers on Wednesday, and then our coolest day does come on Thursday, a high of only 61. Looking in the mountains, it's going to be some windy weather with some of those snow showers on Thursday. Look at these temperatures. 40 for your high on Thursday, 25 that low, and Friday actually stays pretty chilly as well. In the deserts, we will see a big dip in temperatures as well, from the 80s today, 70s on Wednesday, and the temperatures only into the 60s on Thursday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Ariella Scalise.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Drought is a big concern here in California, of course, and now it's becoming more of a problem elsewhere. NPR's Morning Edition will update us on how it's affecting commerce along the Mississippi River. And then on KPBS Midday Edition, it's looking ahead to next month's World Cup with the return of the U.S. men's team to the global soccer tournament. And they're vying for a spot on the first ever USA Blind Soccer national team to play in the Paralympic Games. A group of athletes recently took part in the U.S. Association of Blind Athletes selection camp, and our video journalist Mike Damron was there for the practice.
I have athletes throughout my family, and I was never able to really partake when I was a kid or participate because I was blind. And so when I discovered blind sports, I fell in love, and I fell in love the moment I stepped onto a soccer pitch.
Ready, Cody? Ready? Yeah.
There are 4 field players on each team. The ball has rattles in the lining of it. And you are required to say the word voy if you are attacking the ball. I think it's either Spanish or Portuguese for I am coming.
Good. Keep going. Turn right. Good. Drive.
Communication is vital to blind soccer. It's the only way we could really be out here and play a game without it ending up in just everyone being injured.
Be sharp, yep.
The ball is probably 2-3 times heavier than a regular size 5 soccer ball. It's a little smaller, and the beads inside of it, and, trying to kick the ball, it definitely it's different.
Yep.
soccer is a sport that we all know, right, and love. So the blind athletes are excited to kind of get out here and try something new. It's also a lot more of a physical sport within the blind sport world. So they have to work on a lot of different skills, from communication to orientation, their ball skills. It's a little bit more physical, but I think that's what makes the game so exciting and great.
If the defender wins it, I just want you to dribble straight past that line and we will communicate with you. I want to see what you do after. So if the defender wins it, right, we are countering to that line. Defenders and attackers, you're going to stay in your line for a given amount of time.
To be able to be out here on a 40 by 20 meter field, running as fast as I can, as hard as I can, fighting for a ball, taking shots, it opened up so many dreams. To represent my nation, my country, to put on a jersey with USA behind on the back of it is just incredible. And then to think of all the blind people who are sitting at home right now thinking they can't do this, they can't do something as simple as crossing a street, and I'm out here trying to represent them, trying to spread this message that yes, you can do those things, and if you do them well enough, you can one day put on this jersey too.
And that terrific story was shot and edited by video journalist Mike Damron. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.